This is VOA Africa.
Hello, I'm Esther Githui-Ewart. It's Friday, July 17th. This is Africa 54. Due to the global outbreak of COVID-19, Voice of America is taking every necessary precaution to safeguard its employees. So our broadcast will look a little different today and in the near future as we, out of an abundance of caution, reduce our staffing at VOA headquarters here in Washington. We're working to help keep you informed about what's going on, and we appreciate you staying with us on Africa 54. Social media in Egypt is exploding with voices echoing the Me Too movement following the July 4th arrest of Ahmed Bassam Zaki, a former college student accused of raping or harassing as many as 100 women and girls. His arrest came after a barrage of Instagram posts making the allegations against him. VOA's Heather Murdoch reports from Istanbul with Hamada El-Rassam in Cairo.
It started with an Instagram account named for its social media advocacy for women, Assault Police, which picked up 164,000 followers in less than 2 weeks. On it, about 100 women and girls claim to have been harassed, sexually assaulted, or raped by Ahmed Bassam Zaki, a former student at the prestigious American University in Cairo.
Most women are usually afraid to tell anyone. You don't know if you tell your family if you will be supported or not. Or you may be beaten or touched again by the man who assaulted you.
Egypt has long struggled with the problem of sexual harassment. A United Nations study found that nearly all Egyptian women say at some point they have been victims of some form of it. But the Zaki case has proven to be different. After the women and girls spoke up, the man was arrested, and prosecutors say he will be held as 6 alleged cases are investigated. Zaki's family has been mostly silent, but they did tell NBC News the charges are false and that this is an internet pile-on. But more social media accounts keep popping up, with users posting accusations against other alleged sexual abusers in what some commentators are calling Egypt's Me Too movement.
What's important is that this proves social media can have a very big role if people participate. The reaction was swift. In 48 hours, they captured the accused.
Since the arrest, Egyptian lawmakers have adopted a bill that says victims' names must be withheld from public documents to protect them from threats after they make an accusation. This will encourage more victims to come forward, but there is a lot more to do, say lawyers.
There
should be an independent department in a judiciary that only takes cases related to violence against women, and it should not only deal with rapes, but with other violence and harassment, including between married couples.
Prosecutors say Zaki has confessed to blackmailing women and girls, but at the same time denies all other charges. Heather Murdoch, VOA News in Istanbul, with Hamada El-Rassam in Cairo.
The funeral for Zindzi Mandela, daughter of former South African President Nelson Mandela, is taking place Friday as a vehicle carrying her body was seen leaving the family home. Zindzi Mandela died on Monday and will be laid to rest in a private funeral as South Africa is under strict COVID-19 lockdown. Zindzi's son told South African public broadcaster SABC that his mother tested positive for COVID-19 on the day she died. The 59-year-old Zindzi, who served as South Africa's ambassador to Denmark, died in the early hours on Monday in a Johannesburg hospital, according to a government statement. She was posted to Denmark in 2015 and was designated to become head of mission in Monrovia, Liberia. The COVID-19 pandemic is having a monumental effect on global airlines. As South Africa's coronavirus infections tops 324,000 this week, South African Airways received some good news, a reported government financial commitment to bail out the struggling state carrier whose flights have been grounded because of coronavirus since March. But still, coronavirus may be dealing a potentially fatal blow to a number of African companies. Among those reeling are Air Zimbabwe, whose single plane carrier is $300 million in debt according to the Associated Press. Other airlines hurting include Kenya Airways, Morocco's Royal Air Maroc, and Lome-based regional carrier Askai Airlines, whose fleet of 9 aircraft remains grounded. Even continental leader Ethiopian Airlines is hurting, reporting revenue losses of up to $550 million between January and April, and hasn't made a profit since 2011. Alex Vines, Africa Program Director for the London-based research group Chatham House, says COVID-19's impact on regional air carriers and hubs may also affect Africa's ambitions for the massive $3.4 billion continental free trade zone that is intended to link the continent's 1.3 billion people. In Nigeria, aspiring young filmmakers are gaining international attention, while the Nigeria's film industry, known as Nollywood, has been coping with the realities of the COVID-19 pandemic. Adjusting the world's second most productive film business to social distancing is costly, but it's also sparking more creativity. Ifyok Etang reports from Jos, Nigeria.
Nigerian comedy siblings, the Ikorodu Boys, went viral in June for their online videos mimicking Hollywood films. Nigeria's own film industry, Nollywood, has also had to get creative with staying productive and safe during the COVID-19 pandemic. Actor Bashir Dati says the coronavirus has cost him a lot of work.
This is my first set since this coronavirus started. And what I experienced today is it's not an easy task. We just learn to live with the virus, and life goes on. So we need to adjust ourselves and keep on going, because if you said, because of the fear of the coronavirus, you will not come on set, you have nothing to do apart from filmmaking.
Nollywood produces the second biggest quantity of films in the world after India's Bollywood. I like that. And employs over 1 million people. But the coronavirus shut down cinemas globally and forced many filmmakers to delay productions.
Recently, there's been this whole conversation about what is going to happen, what are filmmakers supposed to do, and we're having this conversation that right now, before you get on set, you have to test your cast and crew, you have to isolate them in a particular place for maybe 14 days and all of that before you get on set. So there's been a lot of spike in the budget that filmmakers would normally spend.
The added cost has forced some Nollywood directors to cut back on the quantity of films. But aspiring filmmaker William Chidube says he sees it as an opportunity to work smarter.
We can always all multitask, we can do a lot of things, especially now you don't have the luxury to deal with a large crew. You can begin to do more than one thing that you know that you're strong, that you're good at. You're good at editing and you're good at shooting, so you do the both of them.
Creatively scripting scenes for social distancing is key to coping with the realities of COVID-19, says writer-director Umar Turaki.
So what's to stop a group of people, writing a story around maybe a particular piece of scenery, around a particular hill, around a particular tree? I'm producing that. But really, I feel like the most important thing is to be able to challenge ourselves in terms of the writing and in terms of conceptualization, in a way that allows us to produce work that doesn't expose us, to the dangers of COVID-19.
While Nollywood has taken a hit from the pandemic, Nigerian filmmakers are confident that with creative treatment, the industry will recover. Ifyok Etang for VOA News, Jos, Nigeria.
The continuing spread of COVID-19 in the United States is making it very difficult for some Chinese au pairs to return home. While they wait for flights to become available, they've been forced to spend money for temporary visas to avoid being deported. Veronica Balderas Iglesias looks at their plight.
Chinese au pairs skydiving, sledding, traveling and visiting theme parks, all part of their experience as childcare workers in the U.S. But COVID-19 took all that fun away.
The main purpose of this program is to see American, to meet people from different culture. But after the pandemic, we lose all of these things. We're stuck in the house. The only thing we can do is to take care of the kids.
Au pairs are young foreigners who spend a year living with host families to care for their children. Sponsor companies in the U.S. help them get visas and find a family. They don't earn much, around $200 a week, plus a room and meals. But some au pairs from China now face shelling out cash for a new visa because their sponsor, Cultural Care Au Pair, dragged its feet booking flights home. In a statement to VOA, Cultural Care blamed the pandemic. Flights, specifically to China, have been difficult to obtain, frequently canceled. Zoe Lee found plenty of flights, but a Cultural Care agent said the company wouldn't reimburse her if she booked the ticket herself.
She only told me $4,000 is over our budget to buy a ticket for an au pair. I don't really know what that means. We don't deserve it, or...
With au pairs like Lee caught in limbo, Cultural Care offered two options. Their host families could pay a $1,500 fee, and the au pairs would get a 60-day J1 visa extension at no extra cost. Or the au pairs could pay $455 for a temporary tourist visa. For au pairs, that's a lot of money.
I go back to China, I have to be quarantined, live in the hotel, and we have to pay for every day. So I just don't want to spend any money here.
This host mom got an email from Cultural Care about the $1,500 option, but it didn't mention a justification for the large fee.
It was sort of a blanket email saying, hey, your au pair can extend for 2 months. You need to pay us $1,500 for this to happen. But there was no sort of understanding that she's going to be staying with you anyway.
Cultural Care did not respond to VOA's specific questions about its return flight obligations. The agency did say, however, that it had now booked flights for all Chinese au pairs with expiring visas and was at work on upcoming cases. The industry's trade group has told the White House international exchange programs, including au pairs, are projected to lose some $233 million in business because of the pandemic.
If they don't have money coming in, then they may not be able to justify for themselves, actually caring and taking care of the workers.
Fang Tien took Cultural Care offer to work for a host family for an additional 2 months to avoid being deported or having to pay for a tourist visa herself.
They urged me strongly by showing me the consequences if I don't extend. You have to buy your insurance on your own, and you don't know how long you're gonna wait, and you have no money, no friends here. You'll be alone, you'll be homeless.
In the end, she says, the system let her down. For VOA News, Verónica Valderas Iglesias, Washington.
The coronavirus pandemic is having a huge impact on nightlife in cities across the United States, including here in Washington. But this week, one of the city's most iconic bars for over 25 years shut its doors for good. VOA's Jen Boyadziewski reports.
For now, the days of hanging out in nightclubs, meeting new people and dancing are on hold. But for the iconic 18th Street Lounge, those days are gone for good.
The legacy of 18th Street Lounge was that it was a home for musicians and DJs to be able to express themselves creatively, perform.
Thomas Blondet is former DJ at ESL. Is it end of an era?
It's definitely an end of an era because now a lot of the musicians in DC and DJs don't have a home to play, their music that we can't play anywhere else. We have that creative freedom there.
The ESL Club, as the 18th Street Lounge was called, was one of the leaders of the Washington night scene. But its owners fear that its end has come.
Any other way, when you have 6 feet apart, people wearing masks, no communication with the bartenders, 6 feet apart, no entertainment and no dancing, what is the point of being in a nightclub? There's absolutely 0 point.
Farid Nouri is the co-founder and owner of the 18th Street Lounge. After 25 years of work, the bar's jubilee would have been celebrated in October, but no longer. ESL is institution, but we will try again with launch on other way to express yourself?
Yes, someone said institutions don't die, they evolve. It's time for us to evolve, and the intersection of time is pretty appropriate, if you ask me. We just hit our 25th anniversary, the pandemic hit, and our lease ran out. So it's an opportunity to leave on a high note.
The hope is that this club, that has been a gathering place for musicians, jet sets, music producers, DJs, a place for fashion shows, will return to Washington in some other form, in newfound glory. Jana Bojadziewski, VOA News, Washington.
We'll be right back.
Hello, I'm Linor Moudou, your VOA health correspondent.
Let us be perfectly clear. All countries.
During the COVID-19 pandemic, the World Health Organization says there is no information or evidence suggesting that the coronavirus can be transmitted by mosquitoes.
There are 2 published studies.
It is a respiratory virus which spreads primarily through droplets, generated when an infected person coughs or sneezes, or through droplets of saliva or discharge from the nose.
This happens during pandemics in the past.
For more information on COVID-19, visit who.int or contact your local or national health authorities.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Britain has announced a ban on equipment from the firm Huawei in the rollout of its 5G super-fast mobile networks, reversing a decision it made just 6 months ago. As Henry Ridgwell reports from London, the move appears to have been forced by U.S. sanctions on Huawei, and China is warning of possible consequences in future trade relations with Britain.
The British policy reversal means all mobile providers will be banned from using new Huawei equipment from the end of 2020, and all existing Huawei 5G technology must be removed by 2027. The decision follows a move by the United States in May to impose sanctions on Huawei, preventing US companies from supplying vital semiconductor chips to Huawei.
Given the uncertainty that this creates around Huawei's supply chain, the UK can no longer be confident it will be able to guarantee the security of future Huawei 5G equipment.
Relations are already tense between Britain and China over Beijing's crackdown on Hong Kong and its response to the coronavirus pandemic. But that wasn't the motivation behind the Huawei ban, says cybersecurity analyst James Sullivan.
Nothing's really changed in terms of the threat perceived from China. Nothing has really changed in terms of what Huawei is perceived that it can and can't do maliciously. It really is down to that fundamental problem of supply. And at the end, the UK has decided that it can't go with Huawei because it is an unreliable supplier.
The United States says Huawei poses a national security risk owing to its close links to the Chinese government and fears Huawei equipment could be used for espionage. Huawei rejects those claims and says the US is trying to crush a commercial rival.
The American administration have decided to trip up the competition.
Britain joins the US, Australia, New Zealand and Japan in banning Huawei equipment. Huawei said the move would put Britain in the digital slow lane. Beijing hinted at wider economic consequences.
It is also the forecast of how safe Chinese investment in Britain is. China is paying close attention.
Beijing's anger is a red flag, says China analyst Steve Sang.
A company, whether it is state-owned or privately owned, that enjoys this level of support from the Chinese government, which is prepared to use everything at the disposal of the Chinese state to support that company, makes that company extremely unusual.
The British ban marks a victory for US policy and the sanctions against Huawei. Washington will be hoping other Western allies soon follow. Henry Ridgewell for VOA News, London.
U.S. Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden's ambitious and increasingly expensive plans to revive the U.S. economy strives to bolster his support among progressives and blue-collar workers in key industrial battleground states. But as VOA's Brian Padden reports, Biden's plans would also increase taxes and add trillions of dollars in government spending over the next decade, at a time when spending to combat the economic impact of coronavirus is expected to increase the budget deficit to a record level of $3.7 trillion by the end of the year.
Citing the economic recession caused by the coronavirus, along with racial inequality protests and the increasing climate change threat, presumptive Democratic Party presidential nominee Joe Biden recently urged bold measures to deal with the cascading crises.
We have a health crisis, an economic crisis, a racial justice crisis, a climate crisis. We need to come together to solve these crises, to solve them as Americans.
Biden's Build Back Better agenda would be the most expansive federal undertaking the United States has seen in decades. Even so, the former vice president is not endorsing his party's most progressive proposals, like universal health care and federal job guarantees. To boost manufacturing, create 5 million new jobs, and make American companies less dependent on Chinese exports, Biden proposes raising annual U.S. government purchases of products made in America to roughly $1 trillion.
Even before Biden has proposed adding an extra $400 billion, about 2% of GDP, to our procurement, we already procure about $600 billion, almost 3% of GDP per year. Okay? So that is a lot of procurement.
The Democratic nominee wants to increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour and expand job training programs that focus on minorities and women. Biden would allocate $300 billion for innovation, research, and development to help U.S. companies compete in the global market. He would also raise taxes on U.S. companies outsourcing jobs overseas and lead an international effort to counter predatory Chinese trade practices. President Donald Trump has said Biden is plagiarizing his America First agenda.
It's very radical left, but he said the right things because he's copying what I've done. But the difference is he can't do it.
Trump's approach to protect American jobs and industries have been to cut corporate taxes, gut environmental regulation, and renegotiate trade agreements. But the president has not offered a long-term plan to deal with the economic fallout from the coronavirus pandemic.
But the president really has not given us much of an economic vision for the next 4 years at a time when we need it the most, as the economy is in its biggest free fall since the 1930s.
Biden also released this week a $2 trillion clean energy and infrastructure plan. His health care proposal to expand subsidies to low-income families is projected to cost $1 trillion, and his education and housing assistance proposals could add another $2 trillion in spending. With at least a $6 trillion price tag, critics say Biden's agenda would explode America's already staggering debt and stifle an economic recovery. But Biden's advisors say long-term programs will be funded by tax increases, mostly on the wealthy. Brian Padden, VOA News, Washington.
In our entertainment segment, Wendy Shea's new music release, Emergency, reveals the heartache that quarantine causes young lovers. Heather Maxwell, host of Music Time in Africa, and Kwame Ofori join up again to present their Song of the Week. Some of the featured artists' fan club also get in on the act. Hi, Heather. Hi, Kwame.
Well, hello, Esther. Hi, Kwame.
Hey, Heather. Hi, Esther.
We're back for another Song of the Week.
Yes.
This time it's from Ghana, which is Kwame's neck of the woods. The song is called Emergency, and it's by a female vocalist, Wendy Shea, featuring Bosom P. Young.
Let's jump right in. I love about this song is you would have never thought or imagined that Bosom P. Young, who is like a hip-life trap artist, and
talented artist Wendy Shea with her new release, And our song of the week, Emergency. Heather and Kwame, thanks for that selection. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, have a great weekend.